You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Doug Collins Podcast. Got a great time today because number one, I'm excited to have my friend John McLaughlin here. He is one of the best at what he does. He's been on the podcast before. He's a friend of the podcast, does polling work. He's polled. If you're not a candidate, if you're a candidate who's not had John do polling for you, you're not a candidate. I'll just say that in the world. Him and his brother have got a great thing going. He does it not only in the U.S., but across the world, literally, in this kind of thing. So a lot of things going on in polling right now, a lot of things that are going on in the presidential race. We're seeing things. We've talked about polling before. So we wanted to have John on 5.5 months out to say, okay, look, what is going on with this? So today, just strap in, have some fun. This is going to be a great podcast. You're going to learn a lot, and we'll be right back right after this break. We are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been a disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market, and there have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. That's what I do. So go to www.legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investment guide. And look, I've read it. You need to read it. There's so much valuable information in there. So, friends, now's the time to not roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold and precious metals can offer you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that Doug Collins sent you. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. There's 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels. You guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins. All right, we're back. John, you're with us again. John, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Great to have you back on, buddy.
Well, it's great to be here, and the only reason I'm a good pollster is I got to work for you, and you made the pollster look good. So you're only as good as the people you work for. I mean, I just report the numbers. You make the numbers. So that's a good
well, we get more and more people who try to make stuff out of these numbers and what there is. And I think, John, one of the things I wanted to talk about is let's go into because I'm going to set this up because I think it was really an interesting concept. I called you the other day because I am extremely concerned that the Biden campaign is far worse than we could have imagined. It's handling things far worse than even the Democrats can imagine. I mean, it's sort of funny. It's tongue in cheek. I'm beginning to worry about James Carville. I mean, every time I see him on TV, he's looking worse and worse. I don't know what Mary's having to do with him down there, but he's in a frenzy because he sees what's happening. But then you have a New York Times poll. And I called you about this, and you gave me some good answers. I want to break this down because I've told people all along, it's good to look at polls. They're a snapshot in time. You get a direction on where to go, but this far out, just be careful. But if you look inside the poll, and that's why we've got you here today, this is where I became, interestingly enough, concerned when it came out in Philadelphia and some of these others dealing in minority voters. So first off, let's just get a good overview, because you do some polling. I know for the Trump folks, for RNC folks, a lot of other Senate campaigns, a lot of the races. Give us your feel as a pollster on where we're at this far out from this race.
Well, if you weren't sure that Trump was in the lead, Joe Biden yesterday challenging him to debate at the end of June tells you everything you need to know, because he's basically trying to change the whole narrative of the race. Because 2 days ago, the media coverage was about inflation being high, the border out of control, Israel and Hamas. I mean, Biden backs and having polled for Bibi for years through the last election. I mean, Biden backstabbing Israel. All these issues are hurting him. Now, the rumor I heard was the White House had some really bad internal polls.
Right.
That all of a sudden they had to flip the script, and it paralleled with the New York Times coming out with these 6 battleground states where they had Trump ahead in 5 of them. Although I would argue that in Wisconsin, they underpolled Trump voters, because in Wisconsin, when you go into what's great about the New York Times, CNN national polls is that they're very transparent. They put up the top line, the crosstabs, they put up registered voters, they put up likely voters, so you can check, because we model our polls on the 2020 election, actual voter turnout. So you got exit polls, you got all sorts of databases, you can look at the polls. And like our national poll that we haven't posted May yet, but we're going to post it tomorrow. But in April, we had Trump ahead 49-45 by 4 points. And in May tomorrow, we're going to post a number where Trump's ahead of Biden 47-43, 4 points, same 4 points. And he's leading with Kennedy in it. And Biden's seeing the same numbers. So if they're seeing the same numbers, they're like, we've got to change the narrative. They don't want to go into summer. It's interesting because they threw out the challenge to Trump right away about let's debate. And it was very specific. They wanted to debate June 27th, and they want to debate again in September, so that, you have it's unprecedented. It's before the conventions, the Republican convention in July and the Democratic convention in August. And it's well before people start voting, even though they start voting in mid-September and October. Most states are voting in October. And so that's unprecedented. And the other part about it is the court case in New York and all these prosecutions of Trump have been backfiring since last year. I mean, we have numbers where 2/3 of the voters, almost 7 in 10, say politics played a role in these. 59% tomorrow, we put out the numbers, say Joe Biden played a role in these prosecutions. I mean, his fingerprints are all over it. I mean, here he is trying to lock up his leading political opponent who's leading him in the polls. He's bet the strategy on indictments and convictions now. And American people are saying, no, there's nothing to this. They're like literally looking at this and they're saying, you're trying. My line to Trump is I tell the president, I said, the only crime you've committed is you're ahead in the polls. And right. Biden's corrupt and desperate. And I said, he's going to end up making you the Nelson Mandela of America, because it's backfiring. And people are, so now, with the trial in New York wrapping up, and we'll see what the jury pool's terrible. I don't know if you've ever practiced law in Manhattan, but it's like the jury pool is over 80% voted against Trump for president. And then, just the icing on the cake to me was when they said, okay, we'll have the trial on Monday, Tuesday. You can have off Wednesday, but we're coming back on Thursdays and Fridays. You know what happens on Fridays in New York? The only group in Manhattan that voted for Trump were Orthodox Jewish voters. And if you have the trial on Friday, Orthodox Jewish voters can't be on the jury, because they start Shabbat in the evening. So it's like, so that's how rigged it is. And it's backfiring.
No, it is. Well, let's break into this a little bit, John, because I think this is something that people need. Let's remind them that when you come out with this, even you polling for Trump or polling for, you're polling Democrats as well. So you have to, I mean, to do a legitimate, and we've talked about this, and you can go back in the previous Doug Collins podcast when John was on, when we really broke this down in depth one time about a year or so ago. But I want them to understand that when you say 59%, that's just, you're not polling 59% of Republicans. You're polling a mix of Republican and Democrats, and you're getting 59% of them to say, look, this has Joe Biden's fingerprints on it. So there's no way that there's not Democrats who are agreeing with what you're saying.
Correct. And what it is, I mean, we modeled it after the 2020 election. There was 160 million people went out and vote. Granted, there might be 260 million eligible voters, but that 160 million was a record turnout. And Republicans were 37%. Oh, no, take it back, 36% of the turnout. Democrats were 37%. But the other thing we put in as a demographic is Biden beat Trump by 4 points in the national popular vote. So we make sure we have 4 points more Biden 2020 voters than Trump 2020 voters. And so what's interesting about that is we've also tracked where you've got 4 or 5% of these polls that voted for Biden in 2020 who are now undecided. You've got another 4 or 5% voted for Biden in 2020 and are now voting for Trump. They're a Trump 24 voter. So they've absolutely switched. And that vote is a quarter African-American, a quarter Hispanic, and their average age is 35. So they're young, and they're more impacted by economic issues, namely inflation. So so you've got these younger working class minority voters as well, heavily diverse, voting for Trump. And it's shocking the Democrats because, like, in Georgia, I mean, when we polled for Nathan Deal, for Governor Deal, that reelection campaign against Carter, we made sure that we were going after African-American voters. And in 2014, we got like 11% for Nathan Deal and 20% for Casey Cagle, lieutenant governor, because we were advocating charter schools. Remember that you had a referendum in Georgia,
right,
that you could start a charter school anywhere in Georgia. Plus, Nathan Deal, before Trump did the First Step Act, Nathan Deal did judicial reform, where if you were a nonviolent criminal, a drug arrest or something like that, you could get out of jail earlier, or you could if you
get the help. Yeah.
Yes, and plus you could go for, instead of going to a regular criminal court, you could go to a drug court, and so that appealed to a lot of African American voters. And when people were saying, "Oh, Nathan Deal might have a runoff, or he might not win to Carter's grandson," he actually, we blew it out. We won by 8 points, and the rest of the ticket blew it out too. And it was. But here you've got the same thing with Trump, where Trump is running 26% of the African American vote in our national surveys. We got 8 in 2016. We got 12 in 2020. And now you're seeing all these media polls with Trump over 20% of the African American vote. And they're giving you specific reasons why they're voting for him, because they don't like Joe Biden. They disapprove of the job he's doing. They're upset about the economics. They're upset about immigration because they're paying taxes. And, they're people that are coming into the country illegally are getting free housing, free cash, food stamps, health care, and they're breaking our laws. And then if you're a Hispanic voter, those people, if you're a voter and you happen to be Hispanic, you're illegal. And they're looking at this and they're saying, it took my family 10 years or whatever to get into this country. We wanted to be Americans. Now you got people from all over the world just walking across the border, and you got criminal gangs. You got fentanyl. I mean, there's a huge swing in the polls. Besides the debate challenge from Biden to President Trump, you also have Biden toying with the idea of, well, we'll cut illegal immigration down to 4,000 illegals a day. So I'm going to tighten up the border. They tried it in that compromise legislation, 5,000. That didn't work. So now they're going to 4,000 illegals a day. It's a voter registration drive. So, it's just, but it shows you that they're afraid.
Well, it is. Well, let's break this down a little bit further, because one of the things is, and I'll go specifically. You sort of hit on it, this issue. But for those of us who've been, and you've been around a long time, John, I as well, who've looked at polls, who looked at trends. I mean, and I called you about this one specifically, and that was the Southeast Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia demographic, the breakdowns that basically took it from an African American perspective, an 80-20 Biden victory to like a 53-36 Biden win. I mean, that's a 30-point swing, 40-point swing, however you want to figure that. Those kinds of things are unheard of in polling many times, unless there's something really significant. There was an event happened, a scandal broke out, whatever. But this is the problem that Biden is having to deal with. And you came back with an answer, and you touched on it in your question there, is that they're frustrated with economics. But I asked a follow-up question. I want you to answer this one. And that one was, because I'm hearing unfortunate rumblings from Republicans who are getting, in my opinion, way too happy right now.
Yep.
They're getting way too happy. And I still think, like I said, there's going to happen. What is your level of concern that those folks come back? In other words, they're protesting like the uncommitted protest in Michigan and others. Out of that 100,000 who cast an uncommitted, how many of those 100,000 are going to be uncommitted come November? What are you sensing in that? Is this a pass through? Because you and I both well know Trump gets 26% nationally of African American voters. This race, he takes 50 states and it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nowhere close.
I've seen polls like that, specifically in Philadelphia. Years ago, I worked for Frank Rizzo in his last race. And, Sal Paolantonio wrote a book about it. Frank passed away from a heart attack in the middle of the summer, which was really tragic. But I'd seen him before that, 2 weeks before, and I was delivering a poll to him, and I said, you're beating Ed Rendell for mayor. He's the Democrat.
Right.
And I said, they know who you are. But we ran a campaign based on getting rid of drugs and crime, and not so much crime, but drugs, which appealed to African-American pastors, et cetera. And then Rendell won a primary where he beat two leading African-American candidates. So in Philadelphia that year, it wasn't so much that they were loving Frank Rizzo as much as that they were upset about the drugs in the community, which has really gone wild in Philadelphia now. You got Trank and all this other stuff. It's a mess downtown Philadelphia. But I said to Frank, I said, you're getting 18% of the black vote, and Rendell's the rest. He's only getting 2/3, and that city's at 40% African American. I said, you're going to get reelected. You're going to get elected mayor again. And Frank said, he told me, he says, I'm going to win the black vote. He starts telling, and he was working so hard. He ended up, he's 75 years old, had a heart attack. But the thing was, it was that moment they were available to us. And right now, what you've got is the crime in Philadelphia. The drugs are really bad in Philadelphia, right. and they have a Soros DA who's letting people go. So the numbers in Southeast Pennsylvania are real because of the crime in and around Philadelphia, and the African American community. We get mostly men, and there's a good number of women. They're part of the safety moms. And so they're real. They're moving to us. And so Trump, he needs to stay on message and stick on those issues. But it's a rejection of Joe Biden. What the vote that's available to us that basically that Biden doesn't have, that Trump is getting, is usually a good chunk of the voters who disapprove of the job that Joe Biden's doing. And there may be different concerns in different parts of the country, whether you're Hispanic, African American, et cetera. Like I told you from the national survey, it's inflation. Because if you go to the grocery store and if you go to buy gas every day and you're working class, you're paying a really heavy price these days. And your standard of living, you're cutting things out. You can't afford it. There may be some interesting things like in Philadelphia. There may be charter schools like there was in Georgia, et cetera. And you may be attracting more of the middle class African Americans who, like for Nathan Deal, what we did was we targeted African American voters who more likely to be married, had ties to law enforcement or the military, and were in favor of charter schools and had children. So we're able to do that. And now you're seeing a similar thing in Pennsylvania. You're seeing it in other states like Milwaukee. You're seeing it in Milwaukee. You're seeing it in Pennsylvania, and you're seeing it in North Carolina. So you can see the rejection of Joe Biden and Trump. There is something else here too, because you remember when Trump got indicted by Fannie Willis in Georgia and he had to go, and people were coming out on the streets just to wave to the car. And it's like, here he is, they know it's bogus. They know it's political persecution, and they can identify with them. And they're saying, and Trump has handled it with this dignified defiance that it's almost like, when Martin Luther King used to go to the, courthouse, all the other civil rights leaders went with him. And here, when Trump is going, he's on trial, and a lot of Republican lawmakers, a lot of people that ran against him or didn't support him in the primary, they're standing with him. So there's a rejection. And when you get like Wildwood, New Jersey, I don't know if you've ever been to Wildwood.
But, I've never been to Wildwood.
You got to go sometime. It's a nice roller coaster. It's a good boardwalk. But it's like you go down there. They have a really nice beach, but they got 100,000 people show up at his rally.
Oh yeah,
that's more than Springsteen and Bon Jovi get at their concerts. It's like
I love it. Hey, John, let's dig into that number, because you've made an interesting point here. And we're still 5 months out, and this could swing some, especially with these voters if they, quote, come home, however you want to look at it, or if Biden does something to drop gas prices, whatever it may be. Anyway, but there's an interesting trend in your polling that I've watched. I've seen some in your polling, but I've also seen in other national polls. And let's use like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Montana, maybe as examples here. Trump winning in these polls in these battleground states, but the Republican challenger to the Senate candidate not doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is this are we getting back into the sort of what I like to call the Obama-Trump phenomenon here, that you have these Obama voters, you have these Trump voters, they don't really care about anything else, and they're showing up for, Biden doesn't have a Biden voter.
Right.
Biden has an anti-Trump voter. So could that be affecting? Because right now, look, we're effectively tied in the Senate right now, pending the election of the president, because West Virginia's gone, baby dog's coming to the Senate, and that's done. So now we're basically 50-50 with the vice president making the thing. I think Democrats could lose 2 to 3 or more of those seats, possibly even in Nevada, Arizona, some others. But why are we seeing the discrepancy in polling?
That's not unusual, because those of us who are old men, like I volunteered for Reagan's campaign in 76 and 80. Then I went to work for one of his pollsters, Arthur Finkelstein, in 82. And Arthur he polled for Reagan, and he was one of 3 pollsters who used to poll for Reagan. But you could go back in the old polls and remember when Reagan won in a landslide. Came at the very end. It came in October after the vote. Before that, Reagan was disliked. He was polarized. For every favorable, you had an unfavorable. Very much like Trump, where he was polarized. People thought he was too old, too conservative, and he was going to blow up the world. And the Senate candidates with Reagan that year were lesser known, and they were trailing Democrat incumbents, but a lot of the Democrat incumbents were under 50. And when Reagan won, he brought them in. In the generic ballot that we have, so we have Trump ahead in our poll by 4 points that we're going to release tomorrow. In the generic ballot, we have the Republicans ahead for Congress by 2 points. And if Trump wins Montana, very likely he brings the Senate candidate with him. If Trump wins Nevada, it's very likely that Jackie Rosen loses. By the way, West Virginia, as you mentioned, 30% of the Democrats there voted against Biden in the primary. And that was because, he's killed West Virginia. He's the coal industry, energy, et cetera. They can't even drive up to Pennsylvania and drill oil and gas anymore. It's like, so, and a lot of people in America, we don't want electric cars. We're not ready for them. They don't have the range. They don't have the strength. And, here he's telling these states, Ohio, Sheriff Brown's in trouble. He's telling them, we're going to mandate electric vehicles. Well, if you got to drive from, Columbus or Cincinnati every day, you don't want an electric vehicle. You want your Ford truck or your GMC truck. And, so Trump's the only path to get that. Plus your jobs. Think of all these jobs. He would kill. Biden will kill Michigan with the electric vehicle mandate. So, the only thing that we've got right now is, when you look at the number of days we have to go, you've got like 173 days left till election day, and people start voting way earlier than that. What I don't like is the Republican overconfidence, where there's a lot of our Republican friends who are cutting the pie before this is cooked, and that's a big mistake. because Democrats, they don't give up. They keep coming. They keep trying to change election laws. They keep on trying to. They don't care about who getting out to vote. They care about ballot harvesting. I mean, these Democrats are going to come, and Biden, he's changing the narrative with the debate. And a lot of these Republicans are like, oh, Biden's too old. He's too this. And you know what? He got through the State of the Union. It was terrible State of the Union. It was polarizing. Right. It was nasty. But the media didn't cover it like that. They covered it like, oh, he did what he had to do. And, the media is it's going to be, that first debate's going to be in Atlanta with 2 CNN moderators. I mean, the media coverage is not going to be on our side. They're going to have a microphone on Trump that they can shut off. There's no audience. I mean, it's all under Biden's rules. So, it's one of those things where he shows up, gets through the debate, they're going to be cheerleading. Plus, it's after, at the trial in Manhattan where they're, I'm very pessimistic that this whole thing is rigged ahead of time, because you got Matt Colangelo left the Department of Justice after he was number 3 in Department of Justice, right? Deputy Attorney General. All of a sudden, after Cyrus Vance say there's nothing to prosecute Trump on, Alvin Bragg says there's nothing to prosecute Trump on, this guy goes from number 3 in Justice Department, working for Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, decides he's going to go to Manhattan, become a lowly assistant district attorney, where they have a habit of letting cop killers go, let alone people who beat up the police. And, he's going to prosecute the former president of the United States. If that isn't a political hit job, I don't know what is. But so now, and they got these prosecutors. Bragg's not bringing the case. He's the DEA, but he's letting his Biden people do it. So I'm pessimistic, because there's going to be an outcome to that trial, and then there's going to be this debate that the media is going to be all in for Joe Biden. So we got to do what we got to do. But
exactly, and I think that's why we got to. I think what your polling basically is saying, and I think this is where I want to sort of wrap today with, is it's good. We know Biden's bad. We know that people aren't liking Biden. But some are going to express that discontent up until later in the year. Then a lot of those are going to, let's be fair, they're going to go back to Biden, really another worst case scenario for them is they don't go out at all. Now that's another problem that we experienced here in Georgia. For the last couple of cycles, we had Republicans who didn't show back up. That's another issue. But I think with Republicans showing up, they're going back. We got a good race. We're in a good position. From a polling standpoint, and again, you reflect candidates, you had talked about that, but what if there was a couple of landmines that bother you between now and November, what would they be? If you're from a polling perspective, is there anything in the polling that says, okay, this looks fine here, but it has some iffy to it? Are you seeing anything like that?
Well, we're holding voters that we didn't have in the last 2 elections. We got to continue to hold them. And a lot of them happen to be minorities, younger voters that aren't part of our coalition, but are basically, when you talk about the Obama coalition, the Obama coalition is coming apart because Joe Biden is failing. So his failures in inflation, on the border, with crime, and also concerns about he can't stop the war in Ukraine, and he's backstabbing Israel. So the Obama coalition is coming apart, and we're benefiting from that. So we got to solidify those votes that we've got. Also, the undecided voters that we don't have yet, they're harder to get. And right. And one last thing too is Robert Kennedy. Biden doesn't want him in the debate. Didn't ask him for him in the debate. Robert Kennedy is a Trojan horse. Yep. He's meant to take votes from us. Now, Robert Kennedy is a liberal. Those of us in New York who know the guy. He's a Kennedy liberal. Whether it's raising taxes, soft on crime, soft on immigration, or being against fossil fuels, etc. That's who he is. So so Biden's kind of caught on that if Kennedy's going to take votes, it's going to be from him. So he doesn't want him in the debates. But that's variable. But there's a lot of time, and we've certainly got a lot of opposition with all the money that comes in for the Democrats and the media, big tech, big media anchoring in for Biden. We've got a tough fight to get through to November 5th and win this.
Yeah, so 2 quick questions.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say one thing and makes me optimistic about Georgia. When you change your voter ID laws, to require in 22. First of all, you secured the drop boxes.
Right.
And then you required voter ID on the absentees that Speaker Ralston, put that legislation the late speaker did, your friend. And then he also voter ID for in person. You notice that in the 22 election, the mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots, the drop box ballots, they dropped from 20 to 22 from 1 million to 250,000. And although Herschel lost, the rest of the statewide ticket won.
Right.
And that kind of honesty and integrity in the rest of the country would serve us well. And we've still got to battle that out between now and November.
Yeah, the Walker race and the Warnock race was decided on a different scale. It was not. It was just different, and there's a lot to talk about there. Two quick questions on that. It made me think of this. Number one, I've heard this, and they talk about money in this presidential campaign. Is except for the ad buys and stuff like this, everybody in the country knows Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Okay, I know that money is an issue that you have to look at to spend and do ground game and stuff like that. Number one, is money with two known quantities as big of an issue? And then number two, is Trump's vice presidential pick really matter?
On the first one, we've been outspent in the past presidential races and won. We got outspent in the primaries. Not just, the combined opposition, but, Nikki Haley outspent us like 18 million to 1 million on TV going into South Carolina. We still won by 20 points. But so Trump, because he's a PR machine, can melt down the opposition's money and render. Right. But it's still nice to have the money for things that we need, because the second part is you got to get the voters out. And what I think is different now, when early voting starts, it won't just be Democrats online. There will be Republicans dying to vote that first day to cast their ballot, as well as independents and Democrats who are unhappy with Biden. They'll want to cast their ballots right away as soon as early voting starts. And I think you're going to see very long lines on the early voting well before Election Day. And it'll be Republicans, not and independents who want to support Trump, and Democrats who want to support Trump, not just Biden voters on those lines.
What about the VP pick? How big of a difference will it make? I
think you should be on that list. But it's
hey, we can get 16 Georgia votes. Hey, let's talk about it.
That's true. It would guarantee Georgia. So, but I think the VP pick is important, because with Biden, one of the arguments that works against him is he gets reelected, Kamala Harris is going to be president at some point. Right. A lot of people don't want that. And then, so you need somebody who can be president. So Trump, he'll want to pick somebody, and that's what he said publicly. President Trump has said, I want somebody who can be president. So you want somebody who can back him up. And you want somebody that in the vice presidential debate with Kamala Harris will not only hold their own, but win. And then it'd be nice if they could bring a state or a demographic to us that could expand the Trump coalition so that we could win by even more votes. So I think the first criteria that President Trump is seriously looking at is, I want to pick a running mate who could be president in case, of some emergency or something like that. So I think that's, but I think we're a ways off, because I don't think he's going to pick that person until just before the convention.
Yeah. Do you think he'll pick it before the debate?
No, I don't think so.
I'm also one of those John. I don't think the debate's going to happen. So I'm still thinking Biden will come up with, a pulled hamstring and not show up. So, I mean, but
there you go, being overconfident. Let me tell you, this is on his terms. It's in his.
Yeah, but I still don't think he shows. I think he shows up. They give him enough B12 to light up the moon, and and he'll make it through. This is why I wish President Trump would say, "Look, I'm looking forward to debating Joe Biden. He's been in politics for 50 years. He's an accomplished debater who's done this many times. I'm looking forward to putting America First agenda out there, and I know that Joe Biden is going to present his case in a very well form. Let's just let the people decide, instead of." Because the news media is going to bring it down to floor level for Biden anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, all he's got to do is show up and breathe and say, "Hi, I'm Joe Biden," and they've said he wins.
Yep. No, you and I agree about that. So, but Biden will debate, because this is it's like the court, the they like rigging these prosecutions against Trump. They're rigging the debates for community. So, if we want to save our country, if we want to get back in the right direction, we got a long way to go. So we got to fight and win every day.
Got you on that one. Hey, folks, this is why we have him on. We have only the best guests, only the folks who can give you the truth. And again, I can't say it enough. John McLaughlin is one of the good guys. He does it all the time. We're glad to have him as a friend, glad to have him as a part of this. John, thanks for coming on and sharing today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later. Everybody, we'll see you next time on the Doug Collins Podcast.